Madam Chair, I'll move approval of the agenda as printed.
Any support?
I'll support it.
It's been moved and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Approval of the December 19th due to 2022 meetings.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the previous minutes from December.
Is there support? Supported by Renata. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition?
Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I'd like to thank Agneet for doing the minutes this time. Really nice set of minutes.
Would
I
you,
thought so too.
Agneet Kangura, yeah, and you talked to her, I know.
yes,
On commission staff for putting these together, so I just wanted to throw that in there.
thank you so much for bringing it to our attention. Report from the chair. I really don't have a report. Except to say that I think we have a very fine board. I think the museum is doing a great job. And I think our committee is doing the job that we're supposed to do. And with that, I'd like to ask anyone else if they have any comments on that they'd like to make at that time. Okay, all right. I think I'd like at this time to ask everyone at the table to introduce themselves because a lot of people here at the table don't know the other people. So I think before we proceed, we should do that. And starting with me, I'm Betty Misraka, and I have the honor of being elected to this board, and then being chair is a double honor. So thank you very much for the time that I've served, and I love all of you.
Right.
Okay,
Stephen Grady Muhammad. I'm a new appointee on the board, finishing out a term and hopefully beginning another term soon.
Anthony Smith, Vice President of Learning and Audience Engagement, Detroit Institute of Arts.
I'm Ian Rapnicki, Public Affairs Officer at the DIA.
I'm Tanya Jenkins, and I'm happy to serve.
Jason Gillespie, Director of Education Programs at the DIA. Julie asked me to attend today's.
I'm Salvador. I'm the director of the DI.
Judith Dolkart, Deputy Director of Art, Education and Programs.
I'm Julie McFarland, Executive Director of Public Affairs and Community Engagement.
Tim Colleen, board member, vice chair, member of the Wayne County Commission, and congratulations, they hired you again. Congratulations.
My name is Renata Seals, member of the Arts Authority Board and appointed member of the DIA Board of Directors.
Get it a little closer. It's these mics. Turn.
I'm Barbara Miller. And I'm honored to serve on the DIA Art Authority.
thank you all for your support and prayers for our board. On E, unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business? No unfinished business.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
if I may.
yes.
There are two members of our team on the call as well, and I would like them to be introduced. We have our board chair, Jean Gargaro, on the call.
Hi, Jean.
Good morning.
We hope you're well.
Thank
And
you,
then
Betty. You
we-
the very same.
Good morning, Jean. And we also have Sharon Harrell, our community engagement manager at the DI.
Hello, everyone. Good morning.
I can't wait. Could they turn that up a little bit so that we can hear?
Can we have it a little bit higher?
I couldn't hear what her last name was.
Sharon.
Harrell.
Harrell.
I'm sorry. I'm Sharon Harrell. Nice to meet everyone.
There we go.
Thank you. That's wonderful. I didn't even know the technology was there. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's the unfinished business. So now we move into a new business. Do we have any new business?
Number one.
Okay, number one. Report from the Detroit Institute of Arts. Who is going to do that?
I am. I'm going to start. So today's meeting isn't really a regular reporting meeting for the DIA. We'll review in detail all of our work from calendar year 2022 when we meet again in the spring. But I did ask to be included on the agenda today to make sure that we followed up on some of the questions and requests for specific data from our program plan meeting in December. So in your meeting packet, and I actually brought it here as well. We could probably pass these around, if you don't mind, Tim.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So what we provided today is a follow-up from our last meeting in December. There was a request for field trip, student field trips for calendar year 2022 organized by city. So that's in the packet. As you can see, it was also in your agenda packet as well. As you can see, we're building the free field trip program back up post-COVID as we begin booking school field trips again, and schools are still dealing with the challenges of lost learning time, transportation, and staffing issues. But that data is there for you. We also provided a one-page overview of our outreach to educators. This is how some of the ways we promote the school field trip program, our educator professional development, and classroom resources. So we have Jason Gillespie with us today. He's the DIA Director of Education Programs. And we wanted him to be here today. I know we've talked about the field trip program. We've talked about our outreach and how we recruit schools and make sure that all of the Wayne County schools know about their service agreement benefits. But I wanted Jason here today to be able to answer any questions directly or take suggestions, things that you think we should follow through on or follow up on to try to make sure that we are reaching wide and far into Wayne County on all the benefits that we offer residents in particular schools.
Just for point of clarification, in this, where you say school district outreach meeting with superintendents, is that the superintendents from all of Wayne County?
That would be the superintendents listed in the document, or principals in some cases if it was an individual school.
Have you contacted RISA to get a hold of all of the superintendents?
I did. I actually contacted them at the beginning, actually the beginning of the last school year, as well as followed up with them. But I know Mr. Smith is planning a really exciting event with the Wayne RISA superintendents. I don't know if you want to speak about that.
I can speak briefly about that. On March 16th, we will be having all of the superintendents from Wayne County at the DIA to present our programs to them and make sure that they're aware of how to engage with the DIA so that their students benefit from what our offerings are.
And just to add on to that, prior communication with Wayne RISA, I think we all know superintendents and principals have been dealing with some pretty significant challenges coming out of the pandemic. And it's been a challenge to get on their agenda in some cases at these meetings. They have limited amount of time and they have some really big issues to tackle. So I think now's a perfect time for us to begin reaching out. Plus, we're getting back into our normal programming too.
And when did you say this event is going to take place?
That's March 16th.
Have you had any response? Do you know how many you will be getting?
Those numbers should be coming on this week.
Who will get the numbers? Because it will be, we won't have another meeting before then, will we?
Julie, is it possible for me to pass those numbers on to you and you can get them to the Art Authority?
Sure. I mean, we'll be making plans for this event. So the organizing people will give us how many people have RSVP'd. And I think we're planning on about 50.
Between 50 and 60
Yeah.
people is what we were told.
What about the school system that's run by the Archdiocese? The parochial schools, they would not be
Not
No.
part of this particular meeting.
No, they
no.
would not be part of this group, but might you do that with the archdiocese and get all of those? I don't know how they're organized. They would be organized by parishes. But maybe that's an outreach too that can be done.
I think that's certainly a possibility and we'll be looking into that.
And then we have then the private schools. Is there any way that they can be reached?
Unfortunately, there's not really anything that I can find, a central database that kind of captures particularly private schools. We do have contact with MAPSA. I might be getting my acronym wrong, but the Michigan Association of Charter Schools essentially. And of course, we know that Wayne County, Detroit in particular, has a significant number of those. And we have outreach and connections with them and they get all of our materials to pass out. So yeah, it's a bit of a fragmented landscape though, but
Yes.
what we're absolutely willing, that's why we're here, I think, is to take suggestions like that. I'd be happy to reach out to the archdiocese.
So at this time, RISA is your only resource that you're using for superintendents?
Yes, yeah, correct. Other than the charter network, which would be a separate approach.
And, there are we have our EduNews newsletter, and that goes to, I think it's a list of, now I'm trying to remember what the number is. I got it last week in my email, but that is a resource that we send out. Is it monthly, Jason?
Yeah, that goes out
EduNews?
monthly. It's
That
our
go-
educator newsletter that goes out.
So, having like a meeting with the superintendents is great, but it isn't the only thing that we do. So there is like a regular drumbeat of communication that we do on a monthly basis. And then, and then these specific outreach.
And I have email distribution lists for every principal in Wayne County, all 3 counties, actually. Again, K-12, because that's where the data lives. There isn't that database that I can find, and I'm certainly open to other ideas, but I'll send out e-blasts for particular programs that maybe need an attendance boost or a little attention, or we want a particular demographic for that. And that goes out on an as needed basis, but several times throughout the year, more targeted emails.
My question is,
Can't be heard.
oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you gotta be close, yeah.
One of the questions that I have, I think it's great that you guys are working or reaching out to the superintendents, but do you plan to have a meeting with perhaps principals or dividing up the principals? Because oftentimes, just as you said, superintendents are very busy. Some of them have large districts, some of them are still behind because of COVID things. But if our intent is to actually reach the schools, what is the plan B if you don't have a good turnout for these superintendents?
So it's not really a plan B, but it is also in the workings that we have the same type of meeting with principals.
It's just not listed here. So I was just trying to make sure that we were on the same page. and
Right,
It's not just verbal, but things are written so that we could follow up properly.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I did check it. EduNews goes to 13,000 educators and subscribers across all 3 counties every month.
And if we could have a specific number of how many in Wayne County sent to us, that would be great, because although we are concerned about the whole entire millage in itself, we are here for the Wayne County Arts Authority. So if we could kind of make sure that those numbers are specific when we're talking, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
The numbers to which you're referring are the EduNews, is that what you're talking
Yes,
about?
she said
Okay.
that there's 13,000 subscribers, or that they send it out to. I want to know how many are in Wayne County.
Got it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I would like to add something to this conversation. My daughter was at Communicating Arts taught in the Detroit Public Schools for 42 years and just retired. But we have to do more than just talk about it and meet with certain people, because certain principals aren't interested in the DIA, so they don't think their students are. So I don't know how to overcome that, but we need to do a better job with getting to know the principals or the vice principals, or either calling in and talking and telling on them, because these other kids are not able to come down. There's so many kids in her school that would have loved to come to the DIA, but the principal of the school would not allow it.
Mhm. Mhm.
So we need, and I found that out just recently, and I think that's terrible. And I don't know whether you call them out or punish them or how do you handle it? But we have to overcome that because certain people just they don't care. They're there and they're just getting ready to retire and they're just going to ride it out, I guess. And they don't care about what goes on below them. And that's terrible to be, but there's a lot of people like that around and they seem to be more than ever.
Madam Chair.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, we'll put you in charge of going and cuffing them and dragging them
I
down
will,
there.
I
That-
won't cuff them, but
but I
I
think-
will
but I
call them on the
think-
paper and then
I
do
just
article.
think this is a case of you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. We can't force people to come down. So,
So
but I noted, I was on the Wayne Risa website recently in an unrelated matter. And I took note that Wayne Risa says 33 school districts in Wayne County. Is that a number?
Yep.
And looking at your report today of the in-museum field trips, that covers 26 of the 33 districts in Wayne County, which translates to 79%. And I think given COVID, which part of this report covers. So when I saw this report, I was like, yeah, we're reaching them. We're reaching people. But you can lead a horse to water. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your generous input. But I still want to go back to my statement because I think we need to work hard at that and I don't know how to do that, whether we think it through or whether we can deal with the principles maybe better, so. Okay, moving on to,
Madam
Still-
Chair, before we move on,
certainly,
You do.
could I make a suggestion?
sure,
If we go through and each entity that we want to reach out to, can we at least get a status of connected with them, they're participating, or they're not participating, or just to know a status of each one? Maybe
that's a
that,
very good point.
that might
This is what's
satisfy
on the
your
record.
desire to,
See who's
yes, ma'am,
helping or helping their children.
yes, ma'am.
Betty, we
Tell them
can't
what
hear
this
you.
is.
What, did you hear him?
I did hear him,
I just
but you
said-
were looking away.
Okay, I'm sorry. I said then, if he made a statement and he'd like us to do it, so you're putting that in a,
In the form of a motion?
okay, so what is the motion again now?
Yes, ma'am. I move that the DIA provide us with a status of each of the entities that are in the county and what their response has been. Are they participating in the program? Are they not participating in the program? What has been the result of our outreach to them?
Just for a second.
Is there a second to that motion?
I second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved in second. All those in favor?
No, I
Okay,
want some
okay, I'm sorry.
discussion.
Okay.
When you say each of the entities, what do you mean each of the entities?
Each of the schools, ma'am.
You're talking about schools or school systems?
I'm talking about the schools within the school systems.
Thank you.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
I second.
It was,
Renata
it
has
was
seconded.
seconded.
Okay. All those in favor?
Discussion.
Okay, discussion, okay. Okay.
I'm sensing this as kind of a bookkeeping, little bit of a burden on the DIA. What's your ability
There are,
without spending more money?
yeah, there are 572 public schools in Wayne County.
Mhm.
So the communication plan would have to be devised in order to realistically meet that. Obviously, I can't visit 572 schools, and I don't think that's not necessarily what you're talking about, but I just want everyone to have a good understanding of kind of the numbers and to your point, our capacity and what that would look like.
When you say, excuse me, Madam Chair, when you say 570 schools, is that high schools?
K-12, elementary, middle, high school,
All
pre-K,
schools.
yeah, everything that's in Wayne Risa.
Not counting the Catholic
Well,
schools or
with the
charters,
understanding
yeah.
that you
Charters.
can't, with the understanding that you can't visit 572 schools, you most certainly can send out 572 emails with
Sure.
a click. And I think what the question here is, can you, with those 572 schools, if they are unresponsive, could that be noted?
Mhm.
and things like that, so that we still can have an accurate account of who's being reached and who's not.
If I may, knowing that he sent out 500, I forget the number, but we have a listing of those schools that have responded. And I think then from that, we can surmise that the other ones did not, instead of, all of the other
I believe
numbers.
that was the question. Can you, we wanted to see that.
It's here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's here.
Yeah, I'd be happy to work on just refining the reports so that you get more information and more reporting on the outreach. And the outcome will be field trip bookings or not field trip bookings, but I'll find a way to correlate those two things in the reports just to make it easier for you to sort of see how those things work together or don't work together.
Sure. So that is the, my concern is not necessarily saying, if you guys are, well, it is to see how you're reaching out, because if it's not a good program, perhaps it shouldn't be in the next service agreement. So if we all have the understanding that that is what we're trying to get to, we're not trying to micromanage your email list or who your assistant knows where or something like that. We're trying to see, is this a program that needs to continue on in the next service agreement? So those numbers are absolutely imperative so that we can make these decisions. Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, based on discussion and the proposal, I don't know what this is actually doing, except creating a little more work for the DIA. The DIA has reported to us time and time and time, year after year of their outreach efforts. We know that they're contacting all of the districts and all of the schools. That's been reported to us a lot of times. And I don't think there's any way other than to say the outreach efforts to schools and bringing the kids down and what we're doing in the schools and what we're doing at teachers has not been a successful program to reach into the schools. So I'm not sure what this is getting at. Schools, principals, superintendents have all been notified for years. And we get reports on who takes us up on it. And so people don't take the DIA up on it. Send the DIA police over and say, yeah, you have to bring your classes down. I'm not so sure that for the work and the paperwork that this generates, that it's going to give us anything to really work with. So yeah, I'm opposed to the motion as it stands.
Through the chair.
Yes, please.
Yes, ma'am. Member Clean, what my point would be is this. If we have people who year over year are not participating with us, I want to know why. Is there some reason? Maybe is there a breakdown in communication? Is there something that happened historically where maybe they were offended? I don't know. But at least if we know who they are, then maybe we can begin an outreach specifically to these folks and say, why haven't you been participating? Maybe they just don't know, or it's something they can't fit within their process. I don't know. But if we don't at least investigate, we'll just continue year over year having people that don't participate and we don't know why. And we are not trying to find out. This would be the first step maybe to us finding out.
And even more so, we have a duty to the citizens of Wayne County. If they are coming on every meeting that we have, we are all receiving personal emails to the group. If they are continuing to ask these questions, I think it is the duty of the board to address these questions within our meetings. That is what I'm doing. These are not my personal questions. These are concerns of the citizens who are paying the taxes to have these programs going. And if they are unsatisfied, if they still continue to have concerns, questions, or anything, this is where we address those things. So I'm not sure. I'm sorry that you are not okay with this, but this is the request of the citizens, and that is the duty of, well, that is my duty. That's what I represent on this board.
I still don't think, Mr. Muhammad, that this generates a lot of work. I'll raise this again in a discussion later on the agenda as far as like a board training and really going through the state law and what this board is obligated to do. I've been through a lot of Zoom. No, first of all, no citizens show up at this in person. What we're seeing is people coming in on Zoom. And yeah, I've been doing Zoom as a public official for a few years here now. And I can tell you what appears on Zoom for comment is not necessarily a reflection of the will of the people out there. Otherwise, we would have never had mask mandates and start banning books, and God love people on school boards that get the public comment. So I'm not sensing there's an overwhelming, and I'd go back to our foundational document, which is the state law on this, which I can't read anywhere in there that we have this kind of duty and obligation. I'll remind people was the DIA that brought us originally 11 years ago now, almost 11, the original service agreement. And the DIA brought us the idea of reaching out and bringing the students down and training some teachers and getting curriculum development and bringing the seniors down. So that wasn't something that was generated from this body or from the Oakland or the Macomb body. Again, I'm just not seeing like there's this overwhelming, or I'm not seeing where the evidence is that the public. We just had a vote to re-up the millages a year and a half ago.
2020, March of 2020.
Now, there was the public comment. Overwhelmingly, the voters approved re-upping the millage after 10 years. Now, you have to take that into account also when you're looking at feedback. And it was 2-1 in the city of Detroit, 2-1 that said, yeah, we want to keep putting our tax money into the DIA and keep the DIA going. So I'm not sure at all. In fact, I'm very sure that the general public is not in some uproar out there about the DIA and our service agreements. That's inside baseball right now. And so I just don't see this. I see this as putting a lot of work on the DIA, spending some more money to tell us what we already know. We contact everybody and not everybody shows up. And I think that's pretty good evidence. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Member Colleen, you mentioned earlier, I think the number that you said was 79% take rate.
79% of the school districts in 2022 sent students to the DIA.
Okay, so that's 21% who didn't.
I can do the math.
And my question would be, what are we doing to impact that 21%? Because how many children are not gaining access to these very important programs, artwork, and activities that can we cut that in half? Can we turn the 21% into maybe just 10%? What is being done to address those who year over year are not participating? This is my suggestion to do it. If you have a suggestion to do it, I would definitely entertain that.
Well, then what I would want to see then is, well, first of all, in the year over year, I'm not so sure that's true too. You send classrooms down this year, you don't next year, and you do the year after that. So you'd want to do a history over, 10 years. And now we're generating a lot more work, right? Who has never come and why, and then, of course, the cost of this, and this would go, I guess, in the service agreement then too. I don't think, given what the voters have said, that it is our obligation here to put a lot of cost on the DIA, because we have the same thing with senior groups. That's not 100%, right, of the seniors. But everybody's been notified and everybody's had the opportunity. To go beyond that is going to take administrative work, and it's going to take actual dollars from the DIA. And I don't feel like the DIA in any way has been lax in their outreach efforts. So I think we're doing well with the outreach, and I don't think it's a mandate in the art authority law or in the millages that get passed that this has to be 100%, right? Because even if you get 33 out of 33 school districts to come down, when you look at the numbers here, it's not every student. It's not every student in that school district. It's a class or two that comes down. So I don't think that the DIA is here, and we all know. And I'm a former teacher, right? Art education has been devastated throughout the school districts, and I think probably the charters are also maybe even more so than the public schools, although I don't have that data. But I don't think it's the obligation of this millage, which is on the ballot, and the citizens are told this is to support the DIA, right? Do you want to have a DIA? Is that important to you, taxpayers? And there's no other things on the proposal that obligates the DIA to do one thing or another. It's like, hey, you want to put $4 into the DIA every year? People go, sure. So I don't see a big mandate out there. I think we're doing well. And I don't want to put DIA resources, I got other things to worry about over there, to something that I'm not sure that this generates anything useful.
Well, I agree with him. I think that we should make an effort to find out if we have a problem, or if we don't, or if not we, but the children have a problem. It's not about us. It's about the kids. And that's what you are emphasizing. And that's what people pay for. They pay for the kids. They don't pay for us to sit around this table and BS. So what do we go with this?
So there's a motion, correct?
So what
Would
is
you
it?
repeat the motion?
Yes. Would you repeat the motion?
Yes, ma'am. I move that we take a look at all of the school districts and schools within Wayne County and what is their participation rate in our programs. And for those who are found to be not participating, for us to devise a way to reach out to them and find out why.
It's a long motion.
It is.
While she's
Well, not necessarily us, but for the DIA to reach out and find a way and report to us, correct?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
Each of the entities in Wayne County.
I will go personally to these schools if you give me I will go. It won't cost the DIA a thing.
I
Just
would
give me
go
the
as
list.
well, just to know, why are you not
Yeah,
participating?
I will go.
Is there something that we could do to encourage your
Hey,
participation?
you
On a
guys,
team,
let's not
we'll
put
go.
the cart before the horse. Let's let the DIA. Do,
You don't
their
know
due
any school principals, Grace.
They'll know me when they finish.
Oh, I've been in schools my whole career.
Yeah.
Remember?
You know how
So,
Is
principals
there a
are.
lot more work involved in this if we go out and find out?
So, we've always, our reporting primarily has been to tell you what our outreach efforts are.
Right?
mhm.
And that's what I wanted to do today. And I'd be happy to have Jason go through this
Okay,
document
so we're
and
ahead of the
give you a
game.
little more
Okay.
information on all of the ways. We'd be happy to take any input on different ways that you'd like us to approach this work. We have traditionally, our reporting has been on who has participated. What I'm hearing in the room is you're also interested in who is not participating, which we can identify who is not. I think the question is, then what?
Mhm.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
if it's a school that doesn't participate, we could send a survey or a questionnaire.
Yes.
That doesn't necessarily mean they will complete it,
True.
but that's something we could do. So
Yes.
I understand what you're looking for, but I think we have to work together
Okay.
to really figure out how to get at. I mean, if it's a school that we have emailed, that we have made phone calls to, that we have made the outreach who isn't participating, I don't know how successful we will be in engaging them in a conversation about why.
Mhm.
But we can talk about how to do that.
Thank you.
So I understand your motion, but I think being specific about the how is something we have to work out together. And I do want to just sort of look at Jason because Jason is the person doing this work. So I don't want to speak ahead of him. And I do want to give Jason the chance to walk through
We're-
this
there's still a
document.
motion on-
Okay.
There's still a motion on the table.
So will you repeat the motion, please?
Yeah. And Madam Chair, I would consider going over the DIA education programs, Wayne County outreach for 2023 as part of the discussion of this motion. So I think it'd be appropriate for that to go on the floor before we take a vote on this motion. So that, again, the reporting from the DIA on what their efforts are, I think are an important part of this discussion.
Is that appropriate to interrupt the transition from the motion and the second discussion? And is it time to vote on the motion first?
I'm suggesting this is part of discussion, is to have this important report on what outreach efforts have been.
Through the chair?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. So what this report will do, and this is great work that you have done as it relates to outreach. At the end of the day, all of the great work that we're doing, we're still 21% of the people are not participating. I want to know why. I want to know, is there something else that we could do? And I liked your idea, Julie, to do some type of survey, or as our chair said, maybe a visitation. To go, sometimes it's just a matter of connecting with people. And if that brings some more children into our universe, that time was well spent.
Yes.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I won't disagree. This is great that we reach the students that we do. It's a different thing to say 100% of the district, 100% of the schools, or 100% of the students. The report before us today with 26 is a total of just under 15,000 students. How many students we got in Wayne County?
220 some.
And that's the public schools, right?
Oh, yeah, that's just Wayne Risa, yeah.
And that's kind of what you're reporting on here. You have a little charter school mixed in. So that kind of, but if you look at this, Detroit had 9,000 students come down. Wasn't that the number?
Yes.
Out of 15,000, well over half of the total number of public school students in the county. Well, Detroit does not have. Detroit has much less than 1/2 of all of the public school students in the county. So we are overperforming at the DIA in terms of getting Detroit students to come down, which I take as a good thing, right? Yeah, it's been devastated for art education, career education. I first started at Denby. They were still tearing down the metal shops and the wood shops and turning them into, I don't know what kind of classrooms. So all of that education has gone away. But when I look at this report, I say we're overperforming for Detroit, that Detroit is well under 50% of the public school students in the county. And our numbers are showing over 50% of the people that have come from DPS. So I just think, looking at this data, I hope you're not suggesting 260,000 students have to come down every year, because then we really have to look at the cost of that and significantly alter any service agreement if that is, what we're at. So I want to be careful and specific about what we're looking for. If we're not careful and specific, and you and I have done this forever, then they come back and they report. And then somebody says, well, that's not what I mean. Go back and do this report if it's not specific enough. And then what are we looking for? And you can play that game for a long, long time. I see it here. You saw it at council. Yeah, public bodies. So that's just my response to you, sir. Let's get students educated and get as much art education as we can to them, but that's a limited number. It is not infinity. We don't have infinite resources to reach all of the 260,000 or whatever students and get them to the DIA. Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I think the success of the second millage is a reflection of the success of what we have done in the schools. Those kids go home and tell their parents that they went to the DIA. I think that's part of the success. And what the motion on the floor is trying to accomplish is that it continue to be successful and that we reach out to others who haven't been touched.
Barb, you've got no support for that allegation. That is.
I
because-
support it.
I'm sorry.
I
I'm
support.
sorry, I was talking.
Oh, okay. I was
I'm
just
sorry.
disagreeing.
15,000 students last year, right? And maybe a similar number the year before?
Just for context, in 2019, we had close to, I believe it was 40,000 students.
40,000.
I mean, COVID definitely did
Mhm.
have an impact on our school program.
Yeah, oh, definitely, right? But even at that, that's like, I'm not envisioning 40,000 students going home, right? And giving this great speech to their parents about, so what I'm when you look at the numbers, Barb, the chance that students going home to tell their parents this was wonderful and that's what made the DIA millage successful on the ballot. I've been counting votes and counting this stuff for a long time. I don't see where that has anything to do
Maybe
with it.
you're getting just too cynical, Tim.
Again, your support for you made a bold allegation that it was what we're doing at this table is what made the last millage successful. I'm saying I don't see that. And I need you to tell me how that is really true.
Thank you for your point of view.
Yes.
We have a motion on the table. How are we going to move on that? Are we going to vote on that at this time? Are we waiting for the programming because the question will still stand? How are we moving forward with that? For this motion, Madam
So-
Chair?
Can we repeat the motion? Because there's been so much discussion, I've forgotten.
Our secretary can.
Motion to identify those schools who are not participating.
Yes, ma'am. Not just to identify them, but to create a strategy and outreach to them to understand why and to see if there's a way that we can bring them into our universe.
Okay, and that has been seconded by Renata.
So
Cooperable.
can we call for a vote on that?
You're the chair.
All those that are in favor, say aye. Aye. Those who oppose,
Nay.
so the motion carries. So we're now on number 2. Report on selecting insurance.
Madam Chair, I'd still like the DIA. They handed a thing out to us about their outreach efforts to walk the board
Oh, I
through it.
didn't know that they,
If that would be okay.
yes, it would be if I can find mine. Yes, please. Thank you. Who's-
Yeah,
Yes.
happy to do that. So beginning at the top is our work with Wayne Risa, historically reaching out to them and trying to get on one of their superintendent monthly meetings. Mr. Smith has now scheduled. And just to clarify attendance at that meeting, I believe that is the Wayne Risa monthly regular superintendent's meeting that they have graciously allowed to be hosted at the DIA and given us a ton of their time. So I think we should get some fair amount of exposure there, not only with superintendents, but you mentioned curriculum directors would be there as well. Possibly, potentially, they've been invited. And then, specific targeted school outreach that we've done with, obviously DPSCD, our work there goes way back. Dearborn is another large district in Wayne County that we have a good relationship with. And then specific schools that we've done work outreach with are listed there. I don't need to read them to you. communication and, programming notification to the Michigan Association of Public School Academies. Dan Quisenberry, I believe is his name, is the head of that organization.
is.
Yeah, I had a
Yeah.
couple of meetings with him as well. And then the African American Superintendents Association, I was unsuccessful on getting on their agenda. If anyone has a contact with them and can help me get on their agenda, that would be great. It is an offshoot of the Michigan Association of Superintendents. It's a cohort within that larger state organization. And then as Julie mentioned, our educator newsletter that goes out to, what was that number again?
13,000.
13,000 educators. And those are folks that have signed up for our educator pass or that have registered for a field trip or an educator workshop. And then our teacher advisory board, we have a standing teacher advisory board that's paid for out of our operating budget. That includes, I think, 5 Wayne County teachers and, spread across, not just CPSCD, but across the county as a whole. And those folks, they meet at the museum 5 times throughout the year and advise our education department on programming that is relevant for, students and teachers. So it's our advisory board. We have a similar, and this isn't on here, but we have a similar Teen Arts Council, which is I kind of call it our student council. They meet weekly, Friday evenings, and they advise us on content and programming relevant for teens. And then they put on 4 programs at the museum throughout the year, like spoken word in the galleries, that kind of thing. Cool stuff. So, and then, various e-blasts, this is where I'm reaching out to principals. So for example, we have a program called Human Rights and Art, which where we use art to engage students in conversations around power and identity and representation. And we have a cohort that I just saw we got funding re-upped for, which is awesome news. But we have a cohort for high schools to belong to that. So every high school principal in Wayne County got an invitation to join this Human Rights and Art program at the DIA, just as an example. So yeah, that's kind of our bigger efforts. And a point of clarification on the motion that was just passed. So when you mean participation, are you just talking about field trips, or are you talking about field trips and teacher workshops and downloading resources or checking out kits? Like, how expansive are we defining participation?
Through the chair. Everything that you laid out, Jason,
Kitchen sink.
that you're doing, I would like to know, how successful are we being? Is there one thing that we can get some more kids in that at the end of the day, what bothers me is this. Somewhere there's a kid that would participate, that would benefit
Right.
from involvement with us. And if we don't do everything we can do to reach out to that child, because that child's not going to reach out to us, we have to reach to them. And if we do that and we get them in our universe, that could be the next great artist. It could be the next great curator.
Sure.
Or board member.
And I will say, today we were prepared to respond to the questions that we had at the last meeting. And the conversations we're having, I think, are really good and rich conversations that we should be having as part of the small committee that has been tasked with talking about, where we go for the next 10 years.
Agree.
In addition to that, I agree with you, Julie. We were just trying to figure out in order to know where you are going, you have to know where you are and where you've been. So we were just trying to actually get clarification for that. Things have went sideways. So I have a question about the school district outreach and the ones that are listed. I'm quite sure this list is longer than this. One of my biggest concerns last meeting was, and I think the reason that you were invited is because we have a lot of involvement with Detroit Public Schools, which is great. I'm not asking for less involvement, but understanding that their Detroit is not all of Wayne County, and that's where the question of the superintendents came up to discuss where are they reaching out to superintendents of other cities within and townships within Wayne County. And then again, I'm looking at this list. I do see Dearborn School District and maybe Hamtramck listed somewhere. And again, I still have those concerns that Wayne County is comprised of 43 municipalities. And I'm not asking that you list all 43, but to list all of them, Detroit, one Dearborn and one from Hamtramck is still very concerning to me. And so in those efforts, we're asking, and as you've all stated, there were reports, but not detailed reports. And that's why we're asking this. So as we shape this millage moving forward, we know what we are shaping and what, you know, where fat needs to be cut and where things need to be added. So with this list and outreach, could you just confirm what I'm hoping is true, that there is greater outreach than this, and let us know why you listed these?
Because these are actual schools that actually both Salvador and I actually visited and spent time with and engaged with teachers and students. And it's of course a capacity issue. Visiting schools is one very small part of my job. Obviously, there are much bigger parts of it going on, and then, you know, spread that out over the 3 counties. So for sure, there are other schools that we have reached out to and engaged with in other ways. But as far as like, also, it's also a question of like their willingness, like just because I send them an email and ask to get on their staff meeting agenda, 9 times out of 10, that agenda is already set and they don't have time for me. So it kind of goes both ways. But I totally get what you're saying as far as like, who are we not serving and why? That is a completely legitimate question. And I think given limited resources, that provides a really great roadmap on where to target intense outreach, that type of thing. It's absolutely.
And at the top of this, it says Wayne County Outreach 2023. But what we really asked for was past outreach. So when you listed these, are you saying that you're going to reach out to these schools, or was that who you, okay.
Who we already did. And I was kind of looking at like calendar year 2022, because I know that's kind of how you look at things. I more look at things, but it was really, so calendar year 2022 into this school year. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any more questions on that? Comments? Okay. Okay, moving on to the next item number 2. Report on selecting an attorney for the authority.
So I was tasked with that. I've recently reached out to get a list of attorneys from, they said that it wasn't a requirement. I believe Tim Colleen said it wasn't a requirement for them to go through the procurement process with Wayne County, but that was my starting point. So I do have a list of attorneys, and we'll be reaching out with our budget availability to these attorneys, and I'm quite sure our options will decrease drastically when they see how much money we have to pay. So I should have that information by Friday.
Okay, and on Friday, and then we will be able to get it through the.
So for the ones who will accept that kind of money, I will ask for proposals. And I'll get those out to you so that you guys can respond, and maybe our next meeting we can vote, or if we have to call a special meeting, but that process will be completed by Friday.
Okay. Okay, thank you for your report.
Okay.
I'm sure.
Yes.
I'd just like to point out too, that I think we put 6,000 in the budget for.
I think
legal.
so.
But
there was a corrected amount too, right?
Huh?
Wasn't there a correction on that amount? But go ahead.
I thought we maybe upped it, but nonetheless, if the number is 6,000 in there and you don't get positive responses to that, this board at any time can entertain a motion to increase the budget for legal. So I would not necessarily look at that as a limiting factor for you. That people aren't willing to work for what's currently in the budget, then we amend the budget. That's all we got to do. So I'm just putting that out there for information.
Thank you. Would you suggest that we wait to amend it or amend it now?
I didn't make any
I
suggestion,
meant-
Madam Chair.
but-
I'm
but-
putting that out on the
okay,
floor
well,
so that the person that's dealing with the attorneys knows that there's options.
Okay, so our next meeting would be time enough to consider this. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay, all right. Thank you for the report.
Madam
Yes,
Chair, perhaps in Renata's communication with these attorneys, you could say that you wouldn't you can communicate that we can amend our budget.
Okay.
is that a formal motion or
No, I'm not.
just a suggestion? Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Discussion.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I don't think you go to attorneys and say, this is our budget. Is that what you want?
Well,
I think you go to them and you say, what does it cost? What's your hourly rates, right? We make some estimation as to how many hours we're gonna need for an attorney for a year. And you don't show your hand with your budget. So if we go through the year and they use more than that, we can just amend it at any time saying, whoa, the legal work was more than we thought.
sure.
So we have to amend our budget. And so I wouldn't talk about what's in our budget. I would just, get costs from attorneys and let's go.
But they do often ask, what is the amount? And I've hired many lawyers. If you guys look me up, you'll know that I do that. So,
No, you tell us your hourly rate.
yeah, so, that will be handled. I am working with, some legal advisors to make sure that it's done properly.
thank you. On number 3, report from the ad hoc committee looking into the service agreements.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I know the service committee agreement has not met. But I wrote a list of things that are my concerns. And I thought maybe we could begin discussion or something with begin with a suggested list. Oops, I didn't take one for myself.
Here, and if I could actually start, here, I think you gave me an extra one. I have one. Oh, okay. If I could actually start, I did do a little bit of homework, to talk about, since it is the #1 item on your list with the property values increasing, we do know at this time that over the next 10 years that the DIA will be receiving an extra $14 million through the property taxes
In Wayne County.
in Wayne County alone. So that is about $1.4 million per year that is going to be given to the DIA. And just as Tim Colleen talked earlier, when we ask for all of these extra things, understand that there's now $1.4 million being added. We know that the cost of other things have gone up, but $1.4 million is a significant number to introduce new programs, to pay for things that need to be done. But I just wanted to make sure that it is known that the homework has been done. It is going to be about $1.4 million per year. So as we have this discussion, where we are. And I believe that they said that it is given to the DIA, the $1.4 million is given to the DIA weekly. It's paid weekly or monthly, no more than monthly. So there is room to kind of watch where that extra $1.4 million is going and get reports on that too. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Barbara.
It's fine.
Just-
Okay, so these notes are mine and mine personally. But I noted that the income to the DIA has increased. So should the allocation to the various segments, schools and senior citizens and community organizations, should those allocations be increased? And then with the additional money, are there any other segments? We're looking at number 3 on my list. Are there any more segments that could be added to the service areas? And I'm thinking maybe the program of Inside Out at the Wayne County Jail. I don't know if it would even be acceptable. The juvenile jail and a special program for foster children who are so neglected and deprived. And that maybe there can be an expansion of service. And then the final thing that I'm looking at is information to the Art Authority members. Currently, we don't get any feedback from the groups that we serve. Like when a classroom comes in, should we ask the teacher to answer a questionnaire? What is his or her reaction to the program that was presented? And then when we get the data about the money being spent, should we know the cost of the services? I mean, what does a bus trip cost? My own community is going to experience 2 bus trips. One was a bus trip for 50 people. We came down to the Van Gogh exhibit, and we're going down we're coming down or going down, I don't know which is the correct word, for a Detroit Film Theater event, which Julie McFarland has been very helpful in helping me set up. So, but it seems to me that we should be apprised of the cost of the elements of the service that are being offered. That's my individual questions to the DIA and to the board.
Any other discussion on that?
Stephen.
Yes, Tim.
Madam Chair, that's why we have a committee. It's for the committee
The
to,
committee hasn't met. I'll submit it to the committee.
Stephen.
may I continue?
Yes.
Thank you. That's why we have a committee to get together. It has not. This is the second iteration of this committee to look at the service agreements, and they've never met. I think those are the questions you ask though in those committees, Barb, right? What is the cost of what these services are? A lot of what you're suggesting, that needs to be talked about in committee. Instead, we're kind of asking a direct question of the DIA here, and then it's another couple of months till we get back here. And so, to focus in on all of the elements of a service agreement, that's why the committee has to meet. And this goes into the hopper that you've done some work, but that goes into the hopper of the committee to say, do we like this? Do we not like this? What do we want to do here? So it's a matter of the committee meeting.
Madam Chair, if you could allow Stephen to
Speak up.
speak for on behalf of the committee also.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. One of the very important tools that we need to be able to do our work is the audit. And from what I'm understanding, the auditors were asked to combine 2 years of the audit, 2021 and 2022. And we're awaiting the results of that. That's the only way that we can really begin to do our work. As Member Seal stated earlier, you got to kind of know where you're coming from and where you're at to be able to know where you want to go. So until we receive the results of that audit, which in a conversation with Member Colleen, I guess he advised the auditors to combine the 2 years. So we're trying to find out when that audit might be done so that we could go ahead and take a look at it. Then we'll know what we need to focus on. And I think our other subcommittee members' questions are very, very, very relevant to that discussion. But until we know where we're at, we almost can't have the discussion.
And in addition to that, Barb, this 3-member committee, it's Renata, Barb, and Stephen. We have
It's Betty.
Mhm.
oh, I'm sorry, Betty,
Mhm.
Stephen, and myself, we have all done individual homework to talk about things at this committee. So, I mean, at this meeting. So it's not that, although we have not met together,
Mhm.
we have all individually done homework. And then I still have reports and questions for things that I asked to be brought to this meeting so that we could continue this discussion. One of the things I asked is when you go over how many students attended the DIA or how many people attended the DIA. When you start to go over the service agreement amount, one of my concerns is why isn't that brought to the meeting? And if I give you $50 or my credit card and I ask you to, you could spend $50 and you turn around and spend $100, before you spend that $100, I think that it should be a question to me, can you spend that extra 50? So before we go above and beyond what the service agreement has stated and allowed, there's no coming back to this unit to talk about possible overspending and how that works. So that was one of the questions that I had. Another question that I also had was about these kits when the students were out of school and they were mailed these kits. I remember that this board, no one on this board, from what I can remember, agreed with those kits, but those kits were still bought and they were still distributed with millage dollars that they weren't with millage dollars.
We didn't apply any of the costs for DIA delivered to the service agreement. That was something that we offered schools, but there weren't any costs associated with it that were applied to the service agreement.
So my question was, why was it brought to this committee then? Like if it didn't involve, we did a lot of work, a lot of people on the board were upset about the kits. I asked that the kits be brought in today, just one kit be brought in today, so that people could see the types of, the public and this board could see the types of things that we are questioned about and asked about. And anything that, like I said, without the audit, we do not know what was applied to the millage and what wasn't in its, as it's itemized.
I get that.
And this question is to the DIA. Tim, I know that you like to speak for them, but when I'm addressing,
Do not
So
make
what-
assertions
okay, so,
about, I'm talking as a board member here.
okay, if
who
you could
understands
allow
my
me to
job
finish, if
under
you
the
could allow
state
me to
law.
finish, I don't like to argue. This is not the place
Oh,
for.
you took it personal, so I'm just
It's not
responding to
personal.
you
It's just,
directly.
it's
Thank
not
you.
personal. I just do not, when I'm
No,
addressing.
you told people what I
What-
was speaking on behalf of.
What I would like is for the DIA to respond when I'm asking questions. These are directed to the DIA. We have emails for each other, and this is why we meet. So this question is more for the DIA to answer. I asked for documents to be submitted about how many students, the outreach efforts and things like that, and a lot of those have been addressed. But without the audit, we still have concerns, we still have questions. So I just wanted to let everybody know that the committee has not met because there was an addition that was made to the auditing firm that we were unaware of as a board. We were unaware. But we want to be made aware of when it's happening so that we can do what is best for the citizens or on behalf of the citizens when we make decisions. Okay.
So,
So we're talking about a lot of different things. So I'll just go back to
Sure.
the kits.
Sure.
The kits were something that we did during COVID because we thought it was important to try to offer other ways to engage schools. It's not the K through 12 field trip program, which is field trips to the museum and bus transportation. So I apologize if I wasn't clear. We brought that to the group just to give everyone an idea of what we were doing when the museum was closed and we weren't having field trips. But we didn't apply any of that spending because it's not as written. It's not within the confines of the K through 12 field trip program. As to the audit, I guess you were talking about there's the audit for this body, and then there's the
Sure.
service agreement audit, which is done by Plant Moran every year. So we do have published through 2021. We are currently doing the 2022 audit because it is only the end of early February here. So we are in the middle of that audit, and normally we present the results of that audit and that documentation at the spring meeting. So that is the plan. If there are any past audits, 21 and prior, that you want to see, I can resend those, but those get distributed in the spring every year. And as far as overages are concerned, we can talk about that. We don't, because the millage is so important to us and the services are so important, we don't monitor. We fulfill every request for a field trip. And that's where the overages would come in the field trip program when we're continuing to spend transportation dollars and it exceeds the amount. And I think that's something when we did the initial agreement, it was really just a guess at how much money it would take to execute a school program. We have 10 years behind us now, so we really know what it takes to do the program that we're currently doing. So we can talk about, right sizing that, I think, as part of the conversations, for a new service agreement. And I didn't have a request. I don't remember getting a request for bringing a kit here today. We certainly can do that if that's something the group wants to see.
Well, if it's not a concern of what was being paid out of the millage, we did have that discussion. I don't know if you guys remember, but we talked about the cost of the kits and things like that. But if it is not coming out of the money for the millage, then it would be of no concern to me personally. That would be something that it was just until today, we did not, I was unaware of that. And just a couple of other documents that we asked for, as we discussed earlier today, that they be brought in, the general cost of a field trip, things like that. But as we do our personal audit for the Arts Authority, we will get that information. But again, we thought that we would have that audit today. We did not know the extra year was added on at the time that we ordered it, because now I think at this time we're going to have another meeting just about the audit in itself, our internal audit.
Okay, so. Any other comments? Do we need to discuss that point now or later in the agenda?
We can discuss it later.
Okay. On number,
Betty, can you wrap up number 3, the report from the
ad hoc committee,
committee
yeah,
on the service agreements? What is your plan? Can you present to the board what your plan for this service?
yes. Who is going to give us that plan from the ad hoc committee?
Well,
Looking into the
we're still
service.
waiting on the audit, so we can't.
So we can't do that today then? Will that be the next board meeting then? Or do we wait for that? Is that holding us up?
Through the chair?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. The sooner we can receive that audit as part of our data gathering phase, then the sooner that we know the types of questions and things to focus on so we can make recommendations. So I don't know where we are in process of receiving the audit. That might be a thing that we can look into. to see when we might receive that audit?
Well, who can speak to that?
Item 4 on the agenda, Madam Chair.
Okay, we're going on to the
Mm.
next. Okay,
Okay,
all right. Thank you.
thank you.
Any other comments? Moving on to number 4, update on the required annual DIA audit.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I've been working with commission staff on this. I'm not so sure what, and you contacted me, Mr. Gray Hamam, about this. And I don't know what the expectation is about what that audit is. And I'm not sure people understand what that audit is. It's a required audit out of the Art Authorities Act. One that we did not recognize as a board until a few years ago that we had that obligation. This is what is required under the Art Authority Act.
Mhm.
Wayne County has a millage. Every year, we collect X dollars of property tax revenue. You multiply the millage times the revenue, and that's how much money should be going to the DIA. With me so far?
With
Right.
you all the way.
Okay.
Go on, keep going.
So in September of every year, this board receives a report from the Equalization Department of Wayne County that says, this is how much property taxes were collected last year. This is the millage rate. And this is how much money should go to the DIA.
Mhm.
This board receives that report every year. Under the Art Authority Act, legitimate expenses of this board can be deducted from that amount, and the balance goes to the DIA. The treasurer writes a check. The audit that's required is to see both sides of those transactions from an independent firm.
Mhm.
Okay. So, yeah, that audit is underway. I don't know how that does or does not help, because we basically get the number from our every September from our equalization department as to how much money the millage has generated. Take out a few thou for our expenses, and that's how much goes over. So that's all going to be verified. But the numbers are going to be what we see in September anyway. So I don't know if that is a necessarily a barrier to the committee's work. But that is underway. It took a little while for Allen Young and Associates to get the person that was assigned the audit, and over the last 3-4 weeks, they've sent over, Allen Young has documents that they need. They have all of those documents now. There's only one trailing one to make sure that our equalization department gets that report to them, which I think they already have. Now, when we realized we hadn't been doing that audit as a board that was required of us under the Art Authority Act, what we did was a year and a half ago, make a proposal to go out and hire a firm. We talked about a 3-year contract to offer people that would be for 21, 22, and 23. Since the audit firm was a little late on picking up all of the information, really getting in sync with us on that, we were already kind of towards the end of the year, and they said, well, why don't we do 22 while we're here? It's a pretty simple and straightforward audit. So it's like, yeah, let's have this board get that, and we'll have it for our next meeting. It'll be for both 21 and 22. And what that audit is going to say, this is how much money was generated through property tax revenue. This is how much was deducted for Art Authority expenses, and this is how much went to the DIA. And we're going to get that for 2 years, and it's that simple. There is another audit out there, and I don't know if people are confused. And Betty, you'll remember this. Early on, we had a meeting. I mean, early on in the first maybe year, 10 years ago, the audit with the other DIA board, or yeah, with the other Art Authority boards, Oakland and Macomb. Remember, the 3 of us had a meeting, and we talked about audits. The DIA, like any other organization, Wayne County, private business or whatever, annually gets an outside audit of their books. All right, Plant Moran, I think you guys use. That's who the county uses. And so that's an audit of the book. When we met somewhere in the first year of the audit with the other boards, because they have service agreements too, we all agreed that we were going to add to that audit something called agreed upon procedures, where you can get something special audited by auditors. And what we wanted the outside auditors to do, Plant Moran, is to look at the money that was set aside in the service agreements, look at the DIA books, and see if that money was spent properly. And that's part of the, and this board has seen that outside audit from Plant Moran every year. We've seen that, and we've seen the results of our agreed upon procedures for what they spent. And people may also recall that in those discussions during COVID, the DIA said, well, they said two things. They reported to us at that time that they were not going to have the kits going to be charged against that. And so we were notified of that. And also, since during COVID, there was fewer senior groups and fewer school groups coming down and less contact with teachers in the DIA reporting that we've got. And they've said, yeah, this year we came up short on satisfying the service agreement. But here's the dollar amount that we came up short, and we're going to apply it to next year so that that money still gets spent. And that was reported to us too. So I don't want people to get the audits confused. One is the outside auditors for the DIA. Did the DIA spend what the service agreements required of them in the categories? The other one is an audit to make sure that what was paid in property taxes, the proper amount of, times the millage, the proper amount was transferred to the DIA out of the millage. So those are the two. At our next meeting, we will get 2 years, 21 and 22, of was the proper amount transferred to the DIA. And then in the outside audit, which we'll get a report on sometime in the spring, I guess, depending on when they get done, we can look at the other amount that did the DIA spend the actual amount of money that the agreements obligate them to. So let's not get the two of those confused. So I don't see any reason why at our next meeting we don't have the audit from Allen Young and Associates that we put out to make sure that what was collected and what was transferred was the proper amount to the DIA. So that's the report, Madam Chair. That's the update.
Any other comments?
To the chair?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. So having both of those audits together, then we have a 360-degree view of the entire process. Not having one of those limits our ability to take a look at what we need to address. So I know member Colleen said that we should have the Allen Young audit by the next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But my point would be then the subcommittee won't be able to do its work until it gets that audit. We have the other audit, but we need them both.
Do you have any suggestions that we could ask them to
Hurry
so we
up.
could see it?
Or see an advanced copy or
advanced
something?
copies. See if we have any questions that have to be.
No, it's a pretty straightforward audit. There's no questions to be asked, really. And we do have from last September, the report from the County Equalization Department. And see, we have to pass that resolution every fall to notify all of the treasurers in Wayne County to put that millage on their winter tax bills, right? So you can just go to that report from equalization and see what the amount of money is that was collected, which would be a useful number for the committee. And then minus any deductions for this board, but that's never been more than like $2,000, So if the thing raised 9 million or 7.8 or whatever it is in Wayne County, then you take $2,000 off that number, and that's the amount that went to the DIA. So I don't think that's a barrier necessarily. We have the number.
Well, Tim, what he's saying, maybe you see it because you're a commissioner, but maybe some of the other people around the table that don't see it is what he's referring to.
Yeah, so I just went through it, what it is, and that number is available,
Okay.
right?
So for us to go and find. I mean,
We
don't-
see it every September.
well, September is a long way off.
We saw it last September. We saw it the September
Maybe
before
we
that.
forgot.
We
Maybe
saw,
We forgot what we saw last September. Can we get a?
so
copy
I'm
of that?
just, yeah, of course, right? Got them in my office. You got them in your board packets, whatever. You didn't because you weren't here. But board members that were here all got it in their packets because
Maybe.
we had to make a legal vote on that to tell the treasurers. We have to have that report to know what to tell the treasurers around the county. So that's a very useful number to you, Mr. Mohammed. It's almost 99.99 of what the money is that went to the DIA.
Sure.
So
Does that satisfy you? But you still have to get a copy of that.
Yes, ma'am.
you can come by my office right after the meeting. We can get them a
It'd be a
copy.
delight.
Thank you.
Yeah, his office is right here. so,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Any other comments on the audit?
He doesn't have to pay parking to come to my office.
Speaking of that, that's going to be on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda.
Just, no, we're going to add it.
Mhm.
Discussion of having a board study session.
Yeah.
That was, I think your.
Yeah, Madam
suggestion.
Chair, you and I have talked about this, but I wanted to put it on. I think that outside of this regular meeting, we should have a board study session to go over some of the basics of this board. Given that it's not a meeting of this board, under the Open Meetings Act, board study sessions, we can schedule and we can meet even with a quorum, as long as we're not talking about making board decisions. That would also extend to board members could attend something like this by Zoom. But this is what I'm suggesting. The Art Authority Act, which is the legal responsibilities of this board, is posted on our webpage. Sent it around a number of times over the years. I think it would behoove us, and maybe when we have an attorney, for that attorney to sit us down and say, okay, I don't know how many people here have read the Art Authority Act, which is what we're legally obligated to do. I've read it several times. I think it'd behoove us as a board to sit down, get a presentation from perhaps our attorney at this time. This is what it is. This is what it means. These are your obligations. These are your responsibilities. So that we all as a board can have a common understanding of that document and what's required of us. I will say that the Art Authority Act is very similar, almost identical to the zoological authority boards. It might even behoove us in a study session to have someone from the zoo board. You got almost exactly the same law that we have. How are you guys handling your business over there? I think that would be useful. So I would like to do two things at this. I would like for us to schedule a session where we can have legal help to come in and walk the board through what the Art Authority Act really is and what it has to say. People can get their questions answered because this is our legal responsibility. At the same time, I would also just like to perhaps also have a more general presentation on boards of directors. What are the legal responsibilities of board? The Art Authority Act is going to give us our specific duties, but there's larger, like what a board is, what we're obligated as a board, how we're supposed to conduct, what are we supposed to do, that is a little bit larger than just the confines of the Art Authority Act. So my suggestion, what I want to put up for discussion today is this something we should do? And I think we should, Madam Chair. So that's my presentation.
Okay,
Is
thank
that a
you.
motion, Tim?
Not yet, it's not. I'd like to hear some discussion. We can turn it into a motion
Okay.
just like that.
Okay, is there any discussion on this issue?
Are you envisioning that we would all come downtown? Or-
No, that's why I mentioned when I was speaking that since it's not this is not an official meeting of public business with an agenda where we're making decisions. So in that case, board members could come in by Zoom. We could have some people attend remotely. I think it's best if everybody sits in the room together, personally. But to have it as an option, maybe for a few people that might not be able to get down here for such a thing. So, yeah,
Thank you.
So you have a motion on the table that we,
I haven't motioned anything yet,
I mean, you're
but
talking about it. So,
yeah,
so is there, are there other voices on this, or how do we feel about this? How does the board feel about this?
Well, I support the meeting. I think it's past time. We should have had it before.
Mhm.
And I support Tim's idea.
I will also support that.
I support it as well too. A board always needs training. So
Yeah.
I support it.
Is there anyone here that would not support that? Okay, so how do we
Madam
proceed?
Chair, I guess I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay.
I'd be willing to do two things, because I think it's fairly straightforward. I would call Wayne County Corporation Council, plenty of attorneys up there that know what the heck. So I'll call the Corporation Council, the good U of D high cub that he is, and say, who do you got up there that can walk us through the Art Authority Act? Or you can do it yourself. And then I would also look for someone in a nonprofit that does just regular, more general board trainings. So we can look at the big picture for boards. And then also look at the specific duty that this board has under the Art Authority Act. So, and I know people in the nonprofit world that can do that kind of generalized board training. So I would get it together and I would shoot for our next meeting, or not our next meeting. I would shoot for scheduling that training at our next board meeting, that we have the people, we're ready to go. What does it look like for folks? Do you want to meet in person one more time? In between meetings, you know, how we're going to do that. But I'll have the people at the next meeting that can do such a training, and then this board can decide when that would happen.
Okay. Will there be a charge to that?
We might have to amend our budget depending on Corporation Council better not charge us. But if we do bring somebody in from the outside to do a board training, there might be a cost associated with that. But see, this is what we're learning with our budget too, Madam Chair.
Yes,
5-6 years ago, we didn't have a budget. We weren't spending any money.
I don't think we spent very much anyway.
We don't spend very much
Oh,
anyway.
okay.
But now, as the reality of the audit that we've discussed today, that we have the annual obligation, right? See, we started 21, 22, 23. Actually, what we're going to have to do at some point is go back to 2011 and get all 10 years of those original ones done. But, you know, it's like 7,000, I think is about the amount of money Alan Young is charging us. The other bid was like 9,000. So if we got to do 10 years of 7,000, 70,000 bucks, that's not going to break the DIA. And we will have done all of our legal obligations at that point, as far as the outside audit goes. So as we grow as a board, Madam Chair, a few more expenses are coming in. I'll point out that if anybody wants to go on the Macomb County Art Authority Board, they run on a budget of about 36,000 a year. And you can see what they're spending their money on. We've been very frugal here. We've been too frugal here.
Yeah.
We've been so afraid of spending money. We haven't spent it on the things we're legally obligated to do. So, so we can always amend the budget as we go, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
That's, yeah.
Thank you for that
So I'll
comment.
bring that back next month.
But
or
along those,
next meeting.
but along those lines, there's a lot of expenses here. I know that Barbara and myself, others have parked out here and it costs money.
Yeah.
All through all these last 10 years.
Yep.
So how do you do that when you don't have the tickets anymore? It's a problem because we should have been doing that all along.
We should have. You know, we talked early on about having staffing for this, and remember, when John Pfeiffer was the chief of staff of the Wayne County Commission way back in the day.
Right.
We actually had a contract for him, and then it became difficulty with, well, are you working for the Art Authority or are you working for the Wayne County Commission when you're here? And having a separate employment contract with him to staff this committee never quite came off. There is a very mixed bag around the county of how much either executive department or legislative department support there is for the myriad of boards that are here in Wayne County. Some have Corporation Counsel as their attorney. So, yeah, and so then that becomes a matter of, okay, how do we, collect what people spend on parking and who's going to send that to the treasurer and how do we take that off? I will mention, Madam Chair, that I think it was at our last board meeting, full board of the commission. Somebody brought up, there were some appointments to a few of the county boards at that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody pointed out how, well, this is a board that doesn't get compensation. And the guy was the former mayor of a downriver community. He's like, I even pay my parking to come down here to meetings, right? Well, that kicked off a conversation. And the chair of the commission was like, ooh, we're going to look into this. So whether that starts a motion from the commission to say, okay, we're going to normalize this for, what is there, 30 some boards in Wayne County, and get that the same. There are some get out of free jail tickets for the Buell Garage kitty corner from here. And then whether it's a matter of, can we just get X number? I don't know who has them. I don't know who has the parking garage thing. I think they're somewhere in the executive department, gets the freebie tickets and they dole them out. So what I'm saying, Madam Chair, is that is something we should be able to figure out this year. I think we can figure it out so that members of this board are not paying exorbitant amounts of money in order to come down and park. That's also a barrier to people serving on the committee and serving. So yeah, that's just another thing that will need some attention the rest of the
I
year.
think so. If we've been on it 10,
I put money for
10
that in the
years.
budget when I did the
So if
back
you-
of the envelope budget.
so if you put money in the budget, then why couldn't we use the budget for that?
Well,
I mean, why couldn't we
it's
just? submit
because
it
it's
without-
administrative. Who's taking the responsibility of collecting from each person, right?
Okay.
Then do we actually have to have a ticket? You don't necessarily get a ticket if you park in one of these surface lots. You're going to sit there with the guy that parks you and say, here, please sign this document that says I parked here today. There's some just practical, but mainly it's the staffing. And thank God, Amina has staffed us and helped us with this today. We don't have Gagneet with us today. We got another member of our PR staff. But they're doing this not on our time, they're doing it on their commission time. So that small amount of staff support, essential, but relatively small. You get the agendas from Amina. Stuff comes from me, comes from the chair, goes to her, and it comes out. Have provided some important functions, but kind of a daily, day in, day out administrator.
Okay.
Somebody that could say, hey, it's time to do the outside, or it's time to do the audit again of how much money goes to the DIA. That is what we have not had. Maybe when we sit together outside of a meeting in a board study session, that's another thing that we could discuss as the administration of this board. So that it's a little less chaotic and a little more mechanical, as it were. This is what we have to do. This is how we have to crank them out.
Very much.
So I will bring that back at next meeting. We'll have a couple of individuals and we're going to know who's going to run this and we can decide on a date then.
Thank you. Any public comments? Any public comments? I have a comment. I went to see the Van Gogh and I thought you did a wonderful job. It was really amazing and thank God that we have it, Salvador, and I know he's a pusher and we'll get it done, but I think we're very fortunate to be in this central part, so many people could come and see it. And I loved on the side of the buses, the Van Gogh. I think that was dynamite. So, and it also promoted the DIA too. And I think that was a wonderful tribute to the DIA that they took that upon themselves to do that. I was proud to see them as I rode by them.
Madam Chair, before we get too far, if we take a vote on the study session, that I'll get a couple of people on.
Did you make a motion?
Yeah, I thought I did.
I don't know.
No motion yet.
Well, then you definitely don't move on. Hey, Colleen, where's the motion? So I move that the board agree to the notion of a study session and the board member Colleen will find it to be two-pronged to look at the general responsibility of boards and then specifically under the state of Michigan law for art authorities. And I will find the attorney and the other person that can lead us through that discussion. And that's my motion.
Any second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's moved in
Discussion?
discussion.
Yes, ma'am. Member Colleen, could we also take a look at having someone with a financial background as well, since there are financial decisions that we have to make in this process? So I don't know if that's somebody from M&B or one of our auditors or something like that. Would that be appropriate in what you're trying to bring to the board?
Well, Mr. Member Grady Muhammad, to what end? I don't think so. I don't see that, right? I don't see like a financial training is something that's necessary here. There's nothing complicated mathematically here. There's nothing, highly unusual that it would take somebody from MMB to walk us through for this board to understand. The art authority law is pretty straightforward and pretty narrow in terms of what our responsibilities are legally. So no, I don't see that as, and of course I've been through board training since forever. And been around this my whole life. I don't see a need for that. And it's not going to hamper our ability or our understanding. But as always, Mr. Grady Muhammad, if something comes up in one of these meetings, right? And it's like, woo, we need something better on this, then we can do it. But just for a kind of a general board training, I don't see that that's integral to us getting a board training, as I'm suggesting.
If not, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, can I
Yes,
chime in?
please.
If not, I know you can't cram everything
And
into
you can't
one
do that,
training
right.
session though, but can that be the next training session?
Well, let's see.
Training the board?
Let's see when that comes out, when we do that training, if people are still like, wow, there's some fiscal stuff I still need to understand. But having been through this, I don't foresee that's the case. But if that's something that we want to do, well, let's get the first one under our belt, right? And get us functioning more as a board with that understanding. Then if there's still more things that this board needs, we're in a better position to say, hey. So I don't see it for this particular one. Yeah, it's too much in one day. And I don't see what we're going to learn from MMB for the purposes of this training. And that may become clearer after we have the trainings. Where you go, yeah, man.
How are we going to decide who trains us?
I'm going to find those people.
And you're going to give a list of people you found in case somebody else wants to add other people to it, or you just taking
If
the,
there's anybody that would like to work with me on
No,
this,
no,
I'd
okay.
certainly, what I am proposing is I'll come back here with a couple of names
so we won't,
and say,
so it's going to be a long drawn out process because we're not going to meet again until
no,
2 more months.
yeah, it's not going to be, I'll come in 2 more months. Here's a couple of people who do this. This is their credentials. Does this look good? And if it does, let's establish a date. And so this could be taking place in 3 months from now, which in some ways is right around the corner. So no, I don't see, unless somebody wants to do it different. I put a motion on the floor. If somebody wants to say I want to amend it, hey,
All right, just was trying to clarify it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other public comment?
No, we're still on Tim's
gotta vote.
motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Motion, by Tim to move that the board have a study session with a general presentation on the duty of a board and the specific responsibilities of the DIA Art Authority Board. And I seconded it.
Okay,
and I will bring those names to the next meeting. For your approval.
any other comments?
Call for the motion.
Call,
Call
all in favor?
aye.
Any opposed?
I oppose.
Now what do I do?
Roll call vote, Madam Chair.
Roll call vote. Well, first, should we ask why he's opposing so we know why?
Oh,
Well, I'd like to know why myself before I vote.
Through the chair, ma'am, I just would like to see maybe if we're going to do a training, I'd like to see us do a training that is comprehensive, that hits on all the things that we need to know about. I know Member Colleen said, the fiscal part maybe is not as much of what we're doing, and maybe it's not. But there are 2 audits here that we have to take a look at. And we need to be able to understand what we're looking at there so we know where to uncover the things that we need to uncover to make decisions.
Thank you for that enlightenment because I needed to know that. So,
Madam Chair.
yes,
Perhaps Mr. Is it Mohammed?
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe you could make a second motion that we have a training session. Just make it a separate motion from Tim's motion.
okay,
I'd be willing to do that.
okay. Mr. Mohammed, would you please tell us your opinion on this or your thoughts?
Wait a minute, we're doing a roll call vote here.
Oh, then we can't vote then.
Let me get to,
We're not gonna be able to vote for that if we.
I can call the roll through the
okay,
chair.
that would be fine. Thank you.
Ms. Seals,
No.
I would like to change my vote to no at this time.
Mr. Grady Mohammed,
No.
Ms. Jenkins,
Yes.
Ms. Rogal Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Colleen.
Aye.
Chair Ms. Saraka,
No,
motion fails.
Through the chair,
yes, please.
may I make a motion?
Yes, please.
Yes, I would like to amend actually Member Colleen's motion to provide the elements that he suggested. The review of the Art Authorities Act that lays out the responsibilities of the board, a review of the larger responsibility of boards in general, and I would like to add a review of the fiscal responsibilities that our board encounters as well.
Do I have a second to that motion?
I second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I just have a question.
Okay.
On that then, how do we fold that into training? That's gonna be a 3rd track?
Yes, sir. Through the chair.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. That's what I see. I mean, the original idea, Tim, was yours. I'm just saying that we need to have that financial component, that fiscal component as well, since that is part of the decision making that we do. So I don't know if it's
Somebody from MMB or somebody from like maybe the zoo board that deals with this, or somebody from MMB. Are you good with somebody from MMB?
I don't know what I don't know. So I don't know if a person from MMB can provide that. I don't know if maybe someone from fiscal analysis in the commission could provide that perspective. I would just like for someone to provide us that perspective.
And if it's all right with you, I can talk to both commission fiscal staff and MMB.
That'd be
for
great.
somebody that, okay.
Yes, that'd be great.
You need to call for the vote.
Uh, uh, n- All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposition? Motion carries.
If I'm understanding this, the board is agreeing to a study session that will include 3 portions.
Mhm.
Okay. Don't need to enumerate them again.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, now we're
Oh,
on
public comment.
public comment.
Any public comment? Did someone say something?
Yeah, this is Steve Panton from Detroit. I'd like to make a public comment.
Who is that?
Someone is online.
Yeah.
Could they repeat their names?
Right up here, ma'am.
Yes, my name is Steve Panton from Detroit. I'd like to make a public comment.
Yeah, on Zoom. Go for it, Steve.
What I sense in this meeting is a desire to move to a more data-driven approach to assessing the impact of the millage, which I think will be widely appreciated. In that spirit, I want to alert the Art Institute Authority to a new database report that creates a scorecard of the impact of the DIA millage in 4 areas. DIA finances, and I can guarantee you need assistance in understanding the relationship between the millage and the DIA's internal finances. DIA performance, which we scored red yellow based on a quantitative benchmark against comparable institutions in the 8 closest metropolitan areas by size. Governance and the service contract. I will send Mr. Grady Mohammed, whose email I have, a link to the full executive summary by email. Mr. Mohammed, I request that you circulate this within your service agreement subcommittee. Section 3 of the report contains 7 common sense fact-based recommendations for the new service contract, which I articulate as much time I have. The new service contract should obviously include an increased target figure for community benefits. Currently, only 5 to 10% of millage money is allocated to community benefits. This may have been made sense with the DIA's precarious financial situation in 2012, but it does not reflect the DIA's current healthy and projected financial status. The new service contract should define ongoing community benefits beyond 2032. The major impact of the millage has been to directly or indirectly increase the endowment, which will provide significant annual revenue for the DIA in perpetuity. The new service contract should reflect this by confirming that the current benefits, free admission, school visits, etc., will continue beyond 2032. Be aware that the Minneapolis Institute of Arts has had free admission since 1989 and is in almost always outperforming the DIA. The new service contract should include a target for the endowment value at the end of the second millage. The target for the endowment, which directly or indirectly will be the major legacy of the public's investment in the DIA, is currently a handshake agreement and not contractually defined. The public's investment in the endowment needs to be more transparent and better protected. The new service contract should require the DIA to engage in an annual process of participatory budgeting to assess what new and expanded services the public want. I believe you already touched on this in this meeting. The services and benefits defined in the current service agreement reflect what the DIA was doing in 2012 prior to the millage. There needs to be a framework and process to assess what services the public currently want and how best to provide them. The new service contract should require the DIA to provide sufficient information to assess its performance relative to comparable institutions and other objective measures. Currently, there are no objective measures of the DIA's performance, which allows them to set their own standards and under-deliver relative to similar institutions in comparable metropolitan areas. For an example of a reporting dashboard, I recommend you see the Boston Museum and Fine Arts year in numbers, which is linked to the report. The new service contract should describe a framework for tracking the DIA's performance and a process of continuous improvement. I believe you've already touched on this in principle in this meeting. With the resource.
Yes.
Next comment.
Next comment.
Next comment.
Could
To your mic, and that was just to be clear, Madam Chair, 3 minutes is the public comment time.
I would like to add something to that because we couldn't hear all of that and hear what he's saying. So he should come down here if he has a problem or send some written confirmation. We can't be responsible for that.
If he can send in his comments in writing to the email on the webpage, that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
So
Any other public comment? Yes, thank you.
My name is Diane Washington. Let me preface this by saying that I'm not representing any particular office, but a public concern. I am a former Detroit public school teacher. I also am an instructor for some local colleges here in the state of Michigan. My question is, I had my students, college students that is, come to the DIA as their assignment. I did not hear, and I could be possibly wrong here, that you reach out to colleges because I have noticed that when my students came to the DIA, they did bring their parents who went to Wayne State University and stated they had never been to the DIA. I would like for more information to be given to either college presidents or deans that in the English department, which, as you probably already know, I'm an English teacher. I taught composition, social studies, history. I'm wondering if you can reach out at some point to colleges, because we have several in the local area of Detroit. Oakland and Macomb County, I think you cover those three, is that correct? I do know that I heard you ask the question, and I'm gonna make this quick, why principals are not mandated that children come to field trips, and they should, because there are a number of students who have never crossed Woodward that live in the city of Detroit and in Oakland County. So some of the principals need to be educated that not only does the art cause them, the students' research, they also cause them to understand the artist, the artwork, how it's done, the country the artist is from. It goes from art to history to math, science. If that can be more explained to some of the principals, perhaps we can have them make it mandated in the English class, because most of these schools don't have art anymore, unfortunately. Because I think art brings about critical thinking. And if the principal has a better understanding of why this should be part of the English program, perhaps we can have more students come to the DIA. Because I find that, well, I grew up here, that the DIA is an important in value to our students and parents here in the state of, well, not just Detroit, but the state of Michigan. That's my comment. I know I only have 3 minutes.
I think it was
Thank you.
wonderful comments. I think you did a wonderful job, and thank you for bringing it to our attention. And I really agree with you. The DIA it's a miracle that we have the DIA here.
Yes.
And we certainly need to utilize it since it's here.
Yeah.
And to our best efforts to make it go further into your comments. I appreciate them. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other in this business?
Anyone else on Zoom for public comments?
Yes, please. May I be heard?
Yes.
Greetings, honorable body. I hope this finds everyone well. And thank you for your service on behalf of Wayne County citizens like myself. My name is Halima Cassels. I'm a homeowner, artist, and mom living in Wayne County. I'm heartened to hear the conversation today, centering our children and access. The DIA is an important institution, and making sure everyone has access is key. I visited the Van Gogh exhibit with my children over the winter break, and we've continued to have conversations about it. We definitely have a jewel of an institution within our city, within our county. I'm concerned, however, that the framework of the first service agreement that was created within the context and the strains of a municipal bankruptcy seem a bit too limiting for what is possible now. Why only 5% being dedicated towards community benefits around the framework of school visits, seniors, and community partnerships? As a board, I know that you can push for more, and more can be allotted to benefit the public. And the public can get a better return on the investment. As we've heard, taxes are increasing. Again, I'm heartened by what I heard in the discussion and the questions being raised today. And I thank you again for your service.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments? Any other comments?
Madam Chair, I did receive a public comment to read.
Thank you.
This comment is from Caroline Korth. A Wayne County District resident of approximately 50 years reached out to the DIA 4 to 5 times in a span of 3.5 years, approximately 3 times in writing. Once they received a response, an acknowledgement of receipt and promise to get back in touch never happened. Never any answer helped. At least could the DIA have a form email, a form postcard saying, "We cannot help Wayne County residents," or "This is outside of our mission," or "Consider going to another source for an answer to your question," or "Here is the answer to your concern," or "Please meet with our representative," or something else. Why is a 50-year plus resident of Wayne County being repeatedly ghosted? Is that the DIA policy as well as practice?
Who was that from?
From Caroline Korth,
Please spell that last name.
Courth.
And where does she live?
She mentioned that she is a Wayne County, Detroit resident.
And so we have no way of getting in touch with her than to ask her or talk with her?
I don't see in the email where she left contact information. This was great. She was in the, she was present today and she handed this to the board. Yes,
Oh, she was here today?
yes.
Oh. Okay, well, I don't know how to thank her for her comments and how we can respond with her not being here, so what do we do from here? What would you suggest that we try to reach out to? Well, we don't know how to reach her anyway, so. Okay, any other comments? Any other comments? Okay, motion to adjourn.
So move, Madam Chair.